Thinking Basketball Podcast. My name is Ben. Welcome back to another episode. And Cody, it has been a spectacular 2 or 3 weeks. I mean, obviously, I've lost track of time. A lot has been going on here in Los Angeles. And if you don't mind, I just want to address that really quickly. To begin with, we've had just obviously devastating fires over the last week. I think it started last week when we were recording this episode. Multiple fires. We just have these horrible conditions with really windy areas and also really dry areas. So the second an ember sparks somewhere, whether it's an electric line or who else knows what can start sparks. I'm not some sort of physicist, but it's very dangerous. And we've had multiple fires. The biggest single fire we have is much bigger than the island of Manhattan, just to put into perspective what's happening. So I think financially it's already the worst disaster, natural disaster in the history of the country. So at the end of the show, I'll try, or in the show notes, I guess I'll try to provide some places where you can donate or support or just try to help people who have lost homes. Of course, we had to delay some basketball in Los Angeles, and now the basketball has been back. They played last night at Staples Center. The Victor Wembanyama Spurs came in and did their thing. But I just want to address that because we are seeing more of these things happen around the planet. Bangladesh was underwater, and I guess still is at the end of 2024. And so if you want less fires, less floods, less droughts from crop loss, then try to keep that in mind and be eco-friendly and green positive moving forward. Can't go back and undo anything from the last 50 or 100 years, but we can try to do stuff moving forward. That's the end of my PSA, and I don't know how to segue to basketball, so I'm going to let you do that, Cody.
Well, really quickly, I just want to, like, you are doing well, right? Like, if you personally lost anything or in specific danger at the moment?
Unfortunately, I know a lot of people who have. It's communities and places that I've spent a lot of time in, so it hits close to home in that sense. It's extremely devastating. My parents were near it. We've sheltered and relocated them down here where we are, and that's a common thing. People who live in that area getting away and trying to get someplace else, and some people losing homes and some people not losing homes. It's been crazy. It's been crazy. And they're saying the winds will also be in a similar situation for another couple days. So anytime there's like a little brush fire, we had one nearby where I live, and you just hope it doesn't basically blow and start to spread. It's not fun.
Well, sending our best wishes, our love from the Midwest. It's just, I mean, the images we see are devastating. Everything that I hear is, if you're on the ground and you're there, it's so much worse than enemy images that you're able to see. So, I'm terribly sorry for all of Los Angeles, for the country, for the world, like you were saying. And I'm glad to hear you're doing okay. And my heart just breaks when I think about everyone that has been involved and continues to be involved there. So
yeah. I mean, it's striking. Obviously, a major international city, but obviously we saw similar stuff in Australia. And as I said, I think this kind of extreme weather is coming in many forms, and it's hopefully we have less of this going forward. That's the goal.
Yeah, for sure. And like you said, the transition from there is tough to handle. You started at the top, talked about some great basketball that's going on. Ben, just going straight to it then, is there anything that's caught your eye over the last few weeks, if you've been able to watch over the last week or so?
This is where I love that you're more sensitive than me, because I was trying to kick it to you so you could transition us to basketball smoothly. So yes, back to basketball for the rest of the hour now. I think basically since Christmas, I feel like the league has been at a fever pitch, but of course it was brewing before Christmas. And so we'll probably talk about the Pacers in a second. We might talk about other teams. We have a ton of Battle Royale games that have taken place in the last few weeks. Cody might have pointed this out on an episode a couple weeks ago, where in December, the schedule was like the calm before the storm. We were like in the eye of the hurricane, where the top teams were not necessarily playing other top teams. And then all of a sudden, it feels like Thunder Cavs, Thunder Celtics, all these other teams, or the Knicks and the Thunder, just playing each other every other night. And what I wanted to do to start the show today, Cody, but then I sidetracked myself with all that, non-basketball talk. What I wanted to do is this got me curious watching all these teams play and thinking about the distribution of teams this year in 2025. It reminds me of a year like 1996 or 2016. And the historians among you out in the audience will immediately recognize 1996 and 2016 as the only 2 years in NBA history that the best team finished with 70 wins. The Bulls went 72-10, and the Pacers. Let me try that again. In 2016, the Warriors went 73-9, breaking that record. But each of those seasons had like 2, 3, 4 teams that, compared to other years, just have like mega records, mega point differentials. You remember in 2016, Cody, it was the Warriors, and then the Spurs were like 67-15 with, I want to say, a plus 10 point differential, and the Thunder, who might not even been healthy the entire season, were also up there, and they had like a plus 7 or plus 8 point differential. And as I've said before, the Cavs were the 4th team, and they were more of a playoff team with transactions and trades and regular season versus playoff LeBron. They won the title, and they, were 50 something and whatever. So this year, very similar thing, where if you look at the standings and you pull the standings up, you will find that the top teams are way, way out in front, and it's very top heavy. And then there are 6 or 7 teams, depending on how you slice it, at the bottom that are just like gifting wins. It's Christmas every day for the team that plays them. So what I did was I pulled up the NBA standings this year without those 7 teams. I just removed those 7 teams from the schedule. So any game that they're involved in gets removed from the schedule, and we could see how the other 23 teams play each other. Okay. And so we can look at each individual team, but I'm going to bring this up if you're watching on YouTube. That's not the right thing at all. I'm going to bring this up in a second. If you're watching on YouTube, I will get the technology to work. But we can look at this at the individual team level. If you follow what I'm saying, like we can go through and say, okay, Oklahoma City looks like the best team. Cleveland looks like the second best team, whatever. And I think there's insight there. But the first thing that I noticed, Cody, is it just helps me put in perspective, like, oh, actually, the top 3 teams aren't the 3 best teams in NBA history playing at a 71 win pace.
Yeah, it's it's really cool to see that, and I'm kind of interested to see like what you ended up seeing when you cut out the bottom part here, because even those like bottom teams, I was looking, was that yesterday, 2 days ago, looking at the scoreboard, and the Pelicans were ahead of the Celtics for a period of time, and I'm like, oh, wait a second, and then no, they just got a little excitement there. But the middle class of the NBA, I think, is really fascinating, because I think on a night-to-night basis, we're going to talk about a couple of those teams today. One in particular, I think, is dangerous. Like that, you go into any night with them, and even if you're the Cavaliers, even if you're the Celtics, even if you're the Thunder, like you don't want to play some of these teams every night. Like it is going to be a boxing match. So do you have like what it all looks like without those bottom? Oh, look at this graphic.
Here we go. So if you are watching on YouTube, for our members, if you're live streaming with us or you're watching later on YouTube, we've pulled up what would look like the traditional standings is just 23 teams instead of 30 teams. I did Philadelphia solid because they have so many good players, but Philadelphia actually comes out as the worst team here. So I was like, should I take Philadelphia out as well? So 7 or 8 teams. I didn't want to remove too many teams. And the Thunder would be right now 23-6 in first place if we remove these bottom 7 teams from the schedule, playing at a 66 win pace. The Cavs would be in second, 19-5, playing at a 62 win pace. The Celtics would be in third, 18-11, playing at a 57 win pace. And then you start to get a bunch of teams in the high 40s, the low 50s, teams like that. And so right away, to me, Cody, that like helped me level set. Okay, how good are the teams up at the top, and what does the middle class look like? And some stat head out there is going to say, Ben, it's going to be a stickler. He's going to say, Ben, the bottom 7 teams are still predictive. Like overall win record is still probably slightly more predictive than win record against the top 24 teams or 22 teams or 18 teams. I get it. It's a minor addition normally. But in this case, we have always looked at how teams perform against the elite, the top 10, the top 5, the top 15. I think it helps as an indicator in the playoffs looking forward. And B, like I said, Cody, just like putting some normalcy up on the screen so we can get an idea of, okay, what does the schedule look like in a way that makes sense? I mean, what do the standings look like in a way that makes sense?
Well, I guess what do you mean by that? Like when you look at that, are you saying like let's make a little bit more sense in the fact that like who do we actually think is going to be dangerous in the playoffs? Like is that the kind of thing you're saying?
I'm saying it's abnormal to try to process all the top teams as 70 win teams, because Cleveland's not going to go 16-0 against the bottom 7 teams in a year where the bottom 7 teams aren't just gifting wins, right?
Got it.
So like in past years, a couple years ago, we had a ton of parity. 2023, when the Nuggets won the title, would they have 53 wins and they were like the second best regular season team in the league or something like that? So it's like we talked about that during that season. Is a team going to win 60 games? And this year you kind of have like, oh, are 2 or 3 teams going to win 70 games? I don't think they'll get there, by the way, but it's just this idea of like level setting on the relative quality of what we're really seeing. How much farther ahead are those top teams? Stuff like that.
I think something I find really interesting between, like, if you go to the thinkingbasketball.net database and you look at how teams have performed the last month, you look at that graphic you just pulled up there. The Celtics, I feel like there's been some discourse where it's like the Celtics are struggling, or at least in the end, blah, 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 blah. Well, they were still third in the graphic that you showed. And in the last month, when they've apparently struggled, they're also still third in net rating across the entire league. And sure, of course, the net rating over the last month is like 6.5, which comparatively to what the Celtics have been posting, yeah, I guess that's relatively struggling. But that Celtics team, I guess, the point that I'm seeing with this is they're so good that when they have a slip, they can slip like 4-3 points, and their net rating is still better than 26 other teams in the NBA. So I think even like seeing the slippage while still being able to like zoom back and be like, you know what, the Celtics team's still pretty good. I think that proves that team is built again to make a pretty deep playoff run. I mean, that's not like a hot take or anything. I'm not here being like, guys, watch the Celtics. They're going to be good in the playoffs. But I do think that some of the talk about them being not as good is probably a little bit overblown.
I haven't heard that too much. I mean, other than just the regular sort of negativity that permeates the space and people just constantly complaining about the Celtics not going 82-0 when did that happen, by the way? Like in 2022, Cody was out on a limb being like, the Celtics are really good, and then they make the finals. And it feels like ever since then, all I ever hear is how the Celtics should never lose a game.
Well, you said, is that what people are talking about? I feel like I'm like a crow trying to pick up morsels of NBA content. Like there's just not a good place to go and just collectively get all of the good NBA discourse. So like these are pockets of discourse. So maybe I'm misconstruing the pockets, the little breadcrumbs of discourse of it all. But I feel like I've heard a little bit about the Celtics in the slide. Can we talk about another team that they haven't been? I guess they're pretty up on this net rating in the last month. They're about middle of the pack in that graphic you just showed. But Ben, number 1 in the last month, we have OKC, net rating of 13.7. That's insanity.
Mm-hmm.
Cleveland, right behind them, 12.6. The aforementioned Celtics, +8. Ben, you know who's fourth?
Well, I do, because I already looked it up.
Do you know who's fourth, Ben?
I do. The Indiana
Pacers
That's
with
right.
a +7.4 net rating in the last month. Have you gotten a chance to check out the reigning Eastern Conference birth team? That's a weird way to put birth. That's the other way I could they made the Eastern Conference birth, not like giving birth to a child, but like they're. Please transition to
I have no idea. I have no idea what you're saying right now. This is glorious. The Pacers are just fantastic. I don't know. We alluded to it in a recent episode and them turning the season around in December, but I think it's been even better than what it sounds like. Hey, they're winning more games and their record is 12-5 in this stretch or whatever it is. It's something like that, but they've played good teams. They've played very well. And maybe more importantly, if you look at your last month splits that you were just talking about, Cody, they're like top 8 in offense and defense. And anytime you start to see that, hey, we're really good at offense and we're really good in defense, you kind of perk up a little, because you go, okay, things are going well on both ends. There's a connection maybe between the defense and the offense. And of course, as we record this, the Pacers snapped the Cavs winning streak. We have a video on that for our members, patreon.com/thinkingbasketball. You can also, if you just only want videos, you could access it as a YouTube member. And essentially that looks at this third quarter mostly, and the Pacers defense and the way they defended, especially the ball screen actions from the Cavs in that game, and just completely destroyed Cleveland's offense, which has been steamrolling people. And Cleveland is coming off this high emotional game against Oklahoma City, where their offense was absolutely clicking. The Thunder, I did not understand the Thunder's screening coverage in that game. And I think for basketball nerds like us, Cody, it was beautiful because it was kind of the opposite of what the Pacers did. The Thunder were putting 2 on the ball in that game, and then the bigs for Cleveland, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley, were rolling behind and getting a 4-on-3 and playing out of that. The Pacers had a completely different coverage that was taking away that slip and that roll and forcing the Cavs to play with defenders in front of them or being pushed into the mid-range downhill, not being able to play 4-on-3 behind it. So that game, that OKC Cleveland game, was incredible, back and forth. You know, the Cavs going zone for like 8 straight minutes in the fourth quarter. And then before that, OKC was coming off the fever pitch emotional high game of playing the Celtics. And that was a great game where the Celtics had this incredible precision in the first half, mismatch hunting and playing twin towers. You had like Luke Cornett and Kristaps Porzingis and Al Horford combinations on the court at the same time. The Thunder make some adjustments at halftime. They start flying around the court. They're forcing 20 turnovers a game, which is absolutely bonkers. Just historically great defense to offense, forcing turnovers, chaotic defense. And the Thunder, they were coming off their own game against the Knicks, where they just, then the Knicks were coming off a game against the Spurs. This is just all in the last few weeks, and yet people are telling me the regular season doesn't matter.
Well, here's what's wild, too. Like that Pacers comeback, they were down at halftime. Halliburton gets injured. They go on this entire run in the second half, and that's how they end up winning the game against the Cavaliers without Halliburton. And then, Ben, tonight, we get the rematch of Cavaliers-Pacers. Like, it's just a little bit too much. And, you've said a lot of things. You've said a lot of things that I want to go on. There's, like, the meta discussion I want to have, but there's also, like, the Pacers conversation I want to have. And let's start and play with the Pacers a little bit. Though I got to tell you, Ben, I'm going to be vulnerable with you. I'm going to be vulnerable with the world right now. Talking about the Pacers makes me feel a little self-conscious. They're the one team I'm self-conscious talking about. And that's because I know Caitlin Cooper is out there somewhere, just like grinding tape beyond anything that I've seen for the Pacers before. So I hope I'm able to do justice for the Caitlin Cooperites out there that are like, oh, you better live up to these expectations. So with that said, I'm going to start with the Pacers at the only place that I know where to start, Ben. We have to talk about Andrew Nembhard and his defense for a second. What do you mean what? That's the starting point.
What is happening?
Are you serious? That's not the starting point for you
right now? This is if you're watching, I mean, this is too much. I need to see what the audience is saying right now about this. There already is a comment about how good Andrew Nembhard is on defense. The reason this is ridiculous, Cody, is I was surprising you with this graphic, which I am now putting up on the screen for our YouTube watchers, about the best on-court net ratings in the NBA in the last month. And I looked this up precisely because of Andrew Nembhard. I'm like, I kind of feel like things are happening with Indiana because of Andrew Nembhard. And you go back and you look at the time he missed, and ever since he's come back in December from injury, this is when things have clicked for the Pacers. And lo and behold, if you look at the leaders in the last month in on-court net rating, you have a couple players from the Cavs, which we've mentioned. You have a couple players from the Thunder, which we've mentioned. And then you have 3 Indiana Pacers. And it's not Tyrese Halliburton, who's slightly farther down this list. It's not Pascal Siakam, who's slightly farther down this list. It's Andrew Nembhard. He's 4th in the NBA. The Pacers are plus 17 per 100. Cody, plus 17 per 100 when he has been on the court in the last month, and his on-off is plus 23. Have you looked at his on-off on the season, Cody? Have you looked at it?
I haven't. No.
The Pacers are plus 10 on the entire year when he's on the court, and his on-off is plus 17 points per 100. They are 17 points per 100 better when he's on the court, and I think obviously a lot of it is his defense. He is a very good defender, but he's also kind of fits in this weird Pacer offense system where he's like, is he great at anything? No. Does he kind of do stuff? Yeah. And the whole thing is, I thought you were going to say you were self-conscious about Indiana because they're, a classic basketball town, but it's the Hoosiers, but also at the same time, they're a small market and no one cares about it. If we title the podcast like 1 hour Pacers talk, like 12 people will listen, but also the self-consciousness is because like the Pacers are kind of awesome to watch. They're kind of really cool.
They're so much fun to watch, Ben. When I take notes, if I see a particular defensive play that I know I'm going to want to bring up on the Thinkies episode when we talk about the best defensive players, I just write in all caps Thinkies. And I got to say, Nembhard has been tagged with the Thinkies last few times. I'm going to take us back to actually the Bulls game on January 8th for a second. He has this play in the first quarter. It's like 7 minutes in there, right? And he's on one side where the ball is, right, obviously, because he goes to double. And then there's some rotations. The ball moves. It skips to the weak corner. Nembhard flies across to that other side, tips the pass, and then saves it. He throws it behind the back to save it from out of bounds. Like when I initially watched it, I'm like, oh, great, he deflected it out of bounds. No, he saved it, right? And that's sort of just like energy, his hands being so active. You watch him against the Cavaliers, like one of his superpowers, I feel. I'm not going to say superpower. That's hyperbolic. We're not going to fall into hyperbole today, Ben. But one of his strengths on defense, besides just like general pick dodging, is like, let's say he's chasing somebody. You see it with Darius Garland. Darius Garland's going around a screen. He's like right on his tail and then kind of does a little like back flick where he's like, wow, and he just gets the ball out from behind you. And I feel like I see this a couple of times from him where he's chasing someone around the screen. He's able to just like dislodge that ball for just a second. And just his hounding of guys like Garland throughout the game, along with, the general pick dodging, which is super important to play against with somebody like the Cavaliers that run so many DHO types of actions out on the perimeter. I mean, it's infectious the way that he plays defense, Ben.
Yeah, they are playing very well. They're very good. Okay, this might lead to another sidebar about defenses. I actually was surprised their defense wasn't better in the last month after starting to watch the film, because in man situations, so I wanted to build to Nembhard, but Cody ruined this by he ruined my surprise I had for him. They have multiple defensive bodies out there. Miles Turner as a drop big. Now, one of the things they kind of do in their base coverage now is they have him up at the level of the screen with a high drop where he can be up. He's not just sitting in the paint like 2020 Brook Lopez or something like that. It's not a deep drop. And then you have players like Jarris Walker coming off the bench and just being a terror. And also you have someone like even Ben Mathurin, who is not a great team defender, but he's athletic and physical. It'll be interesting because Aaron Nesmith, when he comes back, will be another one of these guys. But Siakam is playing a little bit better defensively, I feel like. In Toronto, that was kind of his calling card in the title year as a role player who's a really versatile, dangerous, long, switchable defender. And then I thought he got away from that a little bit. When Kawhi left, they said, oh, you're going to be an offensive number one. You're going to have the ball more. Oh, you're going to shoot a ton of pull-up threes. And it's hard sometimes for players to balance the calorie burn of, hey, I have all this offensive responsibility. I'm also just going to be a dog on defense. But the Pacers just have like 8 dogs on defense. And they do a couple things that I want to highlight. And they did this in the Cleveland game. But they've done it throughout the last, as far as I can tell, they've done it throughout the last month and for a while. Because they did it against the Celtics when they beat the Celtics. They did it against the Thunder a little bit in a game where the Thunder won it at the very, very end of the game, thanks to some Shai Gilgeous-Alexander MVP stardust that he was just sprinkling in contested pull-up threes in the final minute. So they are playing the best teams in the league incredibly well. And we'll get to the offense in a second. But the defensive part of this, full court pressure, is bought like old school full court pressure, not just with one player. Like we'll have 3 or 4 players pick you up full court. That's causing problems for teams. And then even stuff like, I think it was the Thunder game last month, just going to their zone and having it be a more progressive zone, which is a little bit kind of like what the Heat have done in Eric Spoelstra's zone, where you're playing out to the 3-point line more. You're trying to take away the corner 3. You're trying to have Miles Turner, like Bam Adebayo, roam around near the basket, but everyone else is understanding, like, this is not your dad's college zone. We're not sitting in and daring you to shoot threes in the pocket. We're actually trying to take away your point of attack options and take away the 3 when we rotate. And they've been rotating and playing together and being coordinated even guys like Tyrese Halliburton making better plays. For some reason right now I'm blanking on the rest of their players because I'm in a fever pitch of just like Indiana Pacer basketball. But I think they're 7th in the last month in defensive rating. And the only reason why they're not better is because like, the defenses ahead of them are like insane. How good are some of these top defenses? It's incredible.
And I think that's the thing. They don't have like one of those clear guys. And I guess maybe OKC is just a team that's just built with so many of those perimeter guys, but the Pacers are kind of built in the same sort of way where they have these just in your face types of wing defenders that are able to rotate around, can play in the half court, can dog you full court. Like you see Ben Shepherd.
Thank you.
Ben
yes.
Shepherd. Yeah. Darius Garland, just pick, like switch them off. It's like one possession you got Nembhard on you. One possession you have Shepherd on you. Right. And then in the half court, you're talking about like the way that you're able to blend in these zones. I just feel like that's where defense is now in general. For anyone that wants to compete at the highest level for defense, these teams have to be able to blend in. Like we kind of have some zony concepts, but also like this is my guy and I have to be by him. Like I'm thinking about the Celtics game they're playing against them because of course they just played everyone who's worth their salt in the last week.
And very well. They played them incredibly well. Like this is a legitimately good team now.
It's unbelievable. You have one play. Al Horford is posting up Andrew Nembhard, right? Nembhard starts as like the primary guy. And then Jarris Walker comes over and he doubles him. But then the double kind of becomes like this scram situation because Brown then cuts from the top. And it like, usually this would be open. Horford hits Brown cutting to the basket. There's a huge dunk. It's a highlight play. But right before that happens, like as Brown is thinking about cutting, you have Nembhard, who started as the primary defender on Horford. He and who is it on the other side? I think it's Shepherd, actually. Shepherd on the other side of the paint just kind of close it, like right in the paint. They both rotate into the paint to kind of build a really quick wall. And then Brown kicks, and they're both able to just like slingshot off each other to get back to what they were doing, right? And so that's not like a pure zone. That's not a pure man. But both of those guys, all three of those guys, counting Walker in there, who doubles initially, I mean, that's the kind of dance that shows now you want to talk about blanking. Like, who's the coach? Who's the
Rick
coach?
Carlisle.
Rick Carlisle. Yeah. Thank you. A guy who's just been perennially a brilliant coach forever, championship 2011 and everything else. You really see that when he has this team of guys that's able to buy in and do all this kind of stuff, both in full court and half court sets.
Yeah, and Carlisle is up and almost reminded me again of a college team. He's up on the sideline when the Pacers half court sets defensively are in front of their bench, and he's up helping and calling out sort of the point of attack coverage for a guy, pull over, go over, switch, whatever, like left. He's literally like calling the screen coverage for whoever's out guarding the ball. Just very active, and it's teaching principles, right? It's teaching guys, like we've talked about on offense for the last few years, this revolution in basketball, and teaching players to learn concepts versus like a rigid pattern that you have to follow. Hey, it's always A or B, or this is what this play does. It's more of how can I read and react? How can I play out of flow? You'll hear coaches talk about random. I mean, all the stuff we've done this year on the Memphis offense, conceptually, that would be categorized in many places as random basketball, meaning it's not a set, it's not a play call, it's not even a structure. It's like we're just going to go whatever's open in front of us, and the other players on the court have to react by setting a screen or a handoff, or in the Memphis case, spacing and relocating to different positions on the court, like the dunker or the corner. And we talk about all those things offensively, and that's been a revolution. But defensively, you have to be able to do that as well. And so, Cody, one thing I look at in the middle of a season like this, I mean, we've alluded many times to your Celtics 2022 declaration, like they've completely turned it around. They're an inner circle title contender in January. But now we get to this place in basketball where when I watch a team like the Pacers in 2025, for me to really evaluate how legitimate I think what's happening is, I look at the read and react. I look at the IQ. I look at the coordination. And yes, there are some possessions where I think the Pacers defense could give an extra effort. Like the first effort's great, but you need a second effort. There are some situations where you go, is Miles Turner Victor Wembanyama? Of course not. It could Ben Mathurin be Derek White? Of course. Like, of course, there's ways you can upgrade. But man, they are playing really well together. They're communicating well. And I think your entire point in that possession you pointed out against the Celtics, because they had others in that game, about a hybrid zone, it is in essence hybrid zone concepts, but it's the concepts of playing in a position in a system defensively where each person understands what the reads are and what the assignments are, whether it's Tyrese Halliburton or TJ McConnell or Obi Toppin or whomever, right? Ben Shepherd, and they say, look, if there's a breakdown on the ball, this is where we need to be. If there's a pick and roll coming toward me, this is where I need to be. The craziest play from the first game against the Cavs, where they upset the Cavs, was in the fourth quarter. I think Caitlin Cooper actually tweeted this out. Someone sent it to me after the video we did came out. It was in the fourth quarter, and Cleveland was running a pick and roll. It did not start as a pick and roll. There was another action beforehand, like two players setting a screen for the ball. Maybe Darius Garland was dribbling the ball, and Nembhard chases a guy out over that screen. So he's running away from the ball into the other direction, chasing someone over the screen. And then behind him, then they run the pick and roll on the second action. And the pick and roll's coming toward him. And Nembhard's like, hey, if the pick and roll is coming toward me, I'm going to put myself in the gap and stop this. I'm going to be the third defender and plug this thing up. And he does it like spinning backwards sideways. Meanwhile, the fourth defender might have been Tyrese Halliburton on the wing. He sees this and he steps up to help on Nembhard's man briefly. And then at the end, Jarris Walker comes in like a steamroller. He comes back, gets in front of the play, spins around, steals a pass like with a 180 jump headed to the corner. Again, why can he make that play? If you see the highlight, it looks like an incredible highlight steal because he understands the read off the pick and roll is the hit to the corner. And so when I see stuff like that, I'm like, there are multiple players vibing off each other and understanding the system. Carlisle's on the sideline. He's just saying one, he doesn't have to like coach the whole possession. He's just saying one thing. He puts his hand up for the zone call, whatever. I'm like, yeah, these guys are good. And that's why they're playing all the top teams really, really tough.
And that goes on the offensive end as well. You talked about it with like the random set and being able to just kind of play really indicative play against the Thunder. They have possessions like this all the time. And I think I've texted you about this where I'm like, I'm trying to tag this offense, but it just kind of seems like these guys are just like, you watch like the Globetrotters and they're kind of up there and like doing these dribble handoffs. And it kind of feels like the Pacers run an offense kind of like that, where like a couple guys like I think actually volleyball is a really interesting comparison point because you watch volleyball and you have some, I don't know terminology. I just know what I see, right? Somebody sets it. I think you said it.
Yeah, you said it. Yeah.
And then they throw like two decoy spikes. Like two guys like jump up there and they like act like they're gonna swing. But then this third person comes and it's like, actually it's my time to slam this down, right? I was gonna say kill, but I think that's something, I don't know, whatever. But my point is, it feels like it's the same sort of thing in the Indiana offense where you send up like, here comes the first couple of guys, but they're not actually doing a DHO. They're not actually setting a screen. They might slip it. They might ghost it. Who knows what's going to happen? And there's a play against the Thunder where the clock is running down. They essentially use all 24 seconds because the Thunder are just so good at defending. And like when the clock finally gets to the last 3 seconds, Turner has the ball and he's like, well, I guess I got to do something here. And then he drives it and hits this like weird Euro floating type of thing. And he makes it. And I'm like, wow, the Pacers are just so poised. Just like, all right, this isn't working. This isn't working. This isn't working. Well, time to.
Uh-oh. I can't hear you. Can you hear me? You can hear me. All right. We need to check with the audience here. We're having live technical difficulties. Can the audience hear Cody? If someone could let me know in the audience if they can hear Cody, because if the audience can hear Cody, I think you've muted yourself. Try to fix that. I'm going to riff off what you said. Yeah, we can't. We've lost Cody. It's okay. I'm just going to go solo. Well, Cody.
I'm back.
You're back. He muted himself.
I'm back. There's a cord, and then when I plugged it back in, it automatically muted me. There was multiple levels. When was I cut off on my Pacers rant there?
I don't remember because I was going to read some of the incredible audience responses to the Pacer rant. Let's just check. The only thing that could get Ben more excited than doing play-by-play of a recent game is doing play-by-play of an old game. And that is correct. That is an insightful observation. The road gets bumpy as soon as Cody starts using comparisons to other sports. That's okay. So I can't remember if you finished the Thunder play.
Who knows?
Yeah. What jumped out to me is I watched them play the Suns as well this week. And the Suns they're out of the scope of this episode. We're going to be very quick when we talk about the Suns. But the thing is, they're not one of these elite teams. And so what happens is on like one of the first plays of the game, they run the concept that Cody's talking about where someone, in this case, I think, comes up from the corner it was a handoff game with Siakam. Siakam's dribbling up, and you have a guy sprinting out of the corner. No one else is on that side of the floor. And Siakam slows down like he's going to give him the handoff, and then Siakam just keeps dribbling and keeps it. And because it's the Suns, he gets a wide open dunk because the two players on the ball are like, oh, man, that was confusing. They almost handed it off. We have to stop, and we don't know what's happening. And then all the defenders on the backside were just looking at the audience or something like that. And like I said, we're going to get off the Suns. It's not about the Suns. The point is, when you watch teams play lower level teams like that, they just shred them with this stuff. It's the high level games where it's like, oh man, we're playing OKC and we have to find a way to do this 7 times 22 seconds into a possession. And what really is amazing to me, Cody, and you might have maybe more to say on it than me because it baffles me a little bit. The Pacers offense has been better this month relative to the league than their defense. They're like 4th in offensive rating in the last month. And part of it, I think, is obviously having the defense to offense, and just your defense helping your offense has to be a huge part of this because they're turning you over and playing much better and getting stops. But the other part that I think is the low-hanging fruit is if Tyrese Halliburton's going to shoot 40% from 3 again, where he's been the last month, doesn't have the same explosiveness with the hamstring, not the same player. But also this goes back to Andrew Nembhard a little bit because Tyrese Halliburton has had one of the largest drops in time of possession from 2024 to 2025 that we track on our changes board for members, where he has the ball 8% less. I don't mean like 8%. I mean raw points. Like last year, it was like 48% of the time, and this year, like 40% of the time. Or actually, it's even slightly lower than that. I think it's 45 to 37. And when you watch the offense, it's just less Hallie-centric because of what you're talking about. Nembhard can initiate those sets. Siakam can initiate those sets. They flow and play pick and pop with anybody with Miles Turner at the top. And so it gets a little bit more egalitarian and fluid than I think we've seen in the last year. And as long as guys are shooting well, then apparently that's also a really good offense. I don't know.
Can I slip in a statistic here?
Yes. I'm just so happy your mic is working again.
I am too. That was scary. I thought the NBA was coming in and muting and being like, no more Indiana talk. We got to talk about the Knicks or the Lakers or more LeBron talk. And I'm like, all right, I'll talk more LeBron. Okay, we can't actually talk about LeBron. Sorry, everyone. You can mark it on your boards. Here are
Drew Holiday.
According to if he was on the Pacers team, they'd have the best defense ever. Here are, according to the ThinkBasketball.net stats board, here are the leaders in drives per 36, Ben. Right? It makes sense.
This is TJ's stat, right?
Okay. You and I just swim so much in numbers that we ruin each other.
We've done this before. We already did it this season, I think.
Can I finish out the bit though?
Yeah, go for it. Yeah.
So here's how I was going to do it. I was going to say, here are the leaders in drives per 36. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Ja Morant, Jalen Brunson. And you hear that and you're like, oh, that makes total sense. Except it's wrong, Ben, because Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is second to the NBA because TJ McConnell has 23.2 drives per 36, which leads the NBA. And that's super important in the context of what we're talking about with the offense, because you cannot stay in front of him. He's not like Shai. He's not like Ja, where he gets downhill and all of a sudden everyone has to rotate because he's a devastating finisher. No, he's like in the school of Steve Nash, where he's just like gnashing back and forth and trying to find something. But it opens up so much. Like there are times where he cuts in and he's just like back and forth on the baseline. Jarris Walker is like, ooh, I'm going to cut to the basket. And all of a sudden there's a dunk. Or, one guy comes to help off and TJ's like, oh, I'm happy to pass over here. And sometimes he calls on that little, he has like the most 1996 jump shot of maybe any player in the NBA. And sometimes he calls on that. It's not the most devastating score, but he can hit it once in a while. But my point is that endless ball pressure, the endless driving rim pressure that he puts by just constantly getting into the paint when he has it, unlocks something with these bench guys that even like Tyrese Halliburton, I mean, he moves the ball well. He's an incredible passer. The shooting's great, but he can't touch the paint like TJ McConnell. Very, very few guys can touch the paint like TJ McConnell. And that drink stirring is really a key to unlocking some of these other guys like Jarris Walker, like Andrew Nembhard, who aren't as skilled handling the ball like that. Though Nembhard's drive numbers are solid.
Okay, big question, because I have another team I want to ask you about. We look at the Eastern Conference. The Pacers, as of recording this, have moved up into 5th place. Like I said, I think they're 18-6 with Andrew Nembhard in the lineup. Don't quote me on that. I'm going from memory here. I do know that in the last month, they've been one of the best teams, and they're playing at a 60-plus win pace on our board, the way we calculate win pace over stretches. That's very good. Where would you put them? Would you put them in the top 4 in the East? We talked extensively recently about the title contenders, Cleveland and Boston. We've got New York and Orlando right next to them. What are you feeling for the Pacers? What are the Cody vibes right now?
Okay, so we have, I think I'm going to put Cleveland and Boston comfortably ahead of them. Right, that's where I just have them at the moment. I think the Knicks I have ahead of them at the moment.
Okay.
Then the question is, let's say the 2 teams that they're right next to, Orlando and Milwaukee. Like, how do I feel about all of that? I don't know. Here's the vibe.
You don't know on Milwaukee?
Here's the vibe. Here's what concerns
me.
And I'd hate to be the Debbie Downer on this little Pacers talk that we're having.
Well, I'm going to be the Unger upper, so
I watch a lot of them play, and I love every second of it. But I'm like, I really wish Halliburton was last year's Halliburton, and like that would clear up all of my thoughts about what I'm seeing with Indiana. Because if they don't have a guy like last year's Halliburton, I just don't know what the extent is of this offense being super successful against high-level playoff defenses. And then maybe I'm going to be reductive and be like, the Bucks have Giannis, and he's pretty good at basketball. And they have Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton. They seem to do pretty well when he's out there. Like, that's a team that's established. They're elder statesmen out there. They're doing some stuff. If the Pacers played the Bucks, maybe I'd say the Pacers would beat the Bucks right now in a series. But I don't know. And the Halliburton of it all concerns me, Ben.
Wow. That Bucks and Pacers are not even a question in my mind. Now, it might be a bad matchup for Indiana specifically.
Wait. In which direction?
Oh, Indiana, I think, is clearly better than Milwaukee.
Okay.
Clearly. Okay. Yeah. The more interesting question is the teams like Orlando and New York. New York has been mercurial. They've been up and down. The offense is incredible. The defense sort of comes and goes, and it really goes when it goes. I got multiple texts this week from a game the Knicks played where Josh Hart kept helping off the strong side and giving up open shots down the stretch of the game. And I was like, wow, your defense has to be really problematic if you just constantly make like this obvious error over and over again that very few teams make in 2025 basketball. And who is the other? Orlando. We've talked about Orlando extensively. They're very good. We have not seen them all healthy. We do not know what that looks like, especially offensively. And, I'm not saying like, hey, if here are the top 7 teams in the league, you have to insert the Pacers, but they're playing at that level, Cody. They're playing at the level where, to me, I don't even have a question about Milwaukee, who has just had the indicators of like 500-ness the entire season. And the Pacers, with this group and playing healthy, and since Andrew Nembhard, and I think the questions about Halliburton are warranted. But yeah, to me, it's more of a question of somebody like Orlando. What does that matchup look like? Or if they played the Knicks again, what does that matchup look like?
So I'm not quite as comfortable saying Pacers over Milwaukee, and I'm really not doing it as a bit right now. I'm not. Like, if you were talking about a team, like, the depth of the Pacers makes me a lot more comfortable than the Bucks, right? But I do think there's a question of like, what does that offense realistically look like when you get to the playoffs? Whereas, Dame Lillard, I think, is a little bit more complicated in terms of his reputation, I think, when you get to playoff situations. But I don't know. I think that one's a little bit closer. Maybe I would lean 55-45 Pacers if that was a series right now, but I think it would be really, really close.
Okay, so the other team I want to talk about as a shaker and a mover is in the Western Conference, and they are built totally different, and they have a totally different pedigree. And yet, I think it's a similar midseason conversation. We've had this before. We've had these teams in the last couple of years who come in the middle of the year. How does it happen? It just is fascinating to me that you can like flip the script in the middle of the season. And if you look at our last month's standings and we talked about the Thunder and the big three, and the Pacers are right behind them. Right behind Indiana is New York and Denver. And yes, that's right, Denver. Quietly coming back to life. And if you watch them, things do not feel as hopeless when Nikola Jokic goes to the bench at times, which is an encouraging sign for them. There's some sort of synergy going on with Russell Westbrook and Jokic that we can get into if you want. It's very, very interesting. And then, well, the defense has never had to be really good for the Nuggets, but it just has to be passable or slightly above average. It's still in the negative zone, but the offense has been insane. It's been one of the best offenses in the NBA for the last month and change. I don't even know what day it is today. For the last month and change. And of course, a lot of it's Nikola Jokic, but now they're getting Aaron Gordon back. Michael Porter Jr. is flirting with being Michael Porter Jr. of a couple years ago. And Jamal Murray, of course, is the big question mark. I still don't think he looks right physically. He still has had issues with his knee, in and out of the lineup with that knee. But if you can shoot really well and you're a high IQ player and you're out on the court with Nikola Jokic and some other decent athletes and offensive players, you can get situations like we got in the Detroit game a couple weeks ago. Detroit's playing well. They're a very good defensive team. And the Nuggets hung 111 points or something on them through 3 quarters. And that third quarter, even though he wasn't moving like the vintage Blue Arrow, that third quarter suddenly became a Jamal Murray quarter. Why? Because couple pick and rolls, couple 2-man games. Oh, wait, what's this little backdoor cut? Because I know the plays better than you. So Cade Cunningham, you're on the wrong side of me. I'm going to cut this way. Nikola Jokic is going to give me a layup. You're on the other side of me. I'm going to come off. Now you are way too close to the basket down the court. You're on the wrong side of the handoff. I got a classic Jamal Murray movement handoff 3. Let me get another one in the corner. Let me get one in transition. I don't know what his total was in that quarter, but he hit 4 threes, couple buckets, all of a sudden you start to see this and you're like, oh, yeah, okay, yeah. That's why the Nuggets are scoring 140 points a game and their record is they're creeping up. They are in 4th in the Western Conference. So I throw it to you again, Cody. Have you seen any of Denver? Do you have any thoughts on this? I think for the most part, they've been off the radar this year, but they have turned things around. And no, don't go look, Cody, don't go look it up. I can see that look in your face. You're looking something up. You want to know that what their offensive rating is when Nikola Jokic is on the bench. It's 104. Don't look it up.
That's pretty terrible number there, Ben. I have a theory, sort of. It's a meta theory. And it's weird because their defense hasn't been great in the last month, right? That's not the reason for their turnaround. It's their offense that looks fantastic. But they, interestingly, have a same sort of idea that has helped the Pacers turn around. And that is that they have guys, and this, I think Westbrook exemplifies this. They have guys that are playing with force, Ben. They have guys that are playing with force.
Force. You know? Is this you're channeling Eric Spoelstra?
Yeah.
Force. I get scared when he starts talking like that. He gets very intense.
Where is that in Miami? Obviously he's been with Miami. Is that LeBron where he does the staff meme? That might be a deep cut. I don't remember exactly what I'm talking
staff.
Whatever.
I don't.
So
this is great radio. Cody's making staff gestures.
So we have when you look at the Nuggets, Peyton Watson, Christian Brown, Aaron Gordon, Russell Westbrook. These are guys that when you play against them, you feel it, right? And I think watching Jamal Murray this year, you haven't necessarily felt it, okay? It's a lot more athletic. It's the step-back jumpers. He's, of course, got the mid-range shot down. The three-point shot he's always been good at. But somebody like Westbrook, he gets the rebound like he's done for his entire career, and he just takes it 94 feet. And if you don't send guys to get in front of him, he's just going to go charging, right? And sometimes it's not the most tactical physicality. That's always been the thing with Westbrook. It's maybe if you took just 10% off that top speed, the finishing would be a little bit better. But it opens up so much when you have a guy that is just recklessly driving, or you cut in he cuts in, Jokic hits him with the dump off pass, and he's like, I'm going to cock this back and try to throw it down on you. And Christian Brown's the exact same way. Aaron Gordon's the same way. We saw that in the playoffs and his ability to keep up with some of the Minnesota Timberwolves physicality. And it's the same sort of thing as the Pacers, right? And I think the Pacers, it's more so on the defensive end where you send all these guys to be super physical all the time, to just play with, force is just kind of like, an intelligent sort of motor that these guys are playing with. And I keep thinking, I'm like, man, if you're a struggling team or if you need to have some kind of turnaround, it feels like you want to load up on a bunch of role players that are just playing like high octane basketball, that are just going to be in people's faces, that are going to cut to the basket with force. And I think that's almost more valuable than just being like, oh, this guy shoots 42% from three, let's sign him. Not saying that's not valuable, but this other aspect of it that like the Rockets and the Magic have unlocked seems to be something brewing right now with a couple of these teams, Ben.
I don't think it's easy to find. I mean, I think you need a certain amount of athleticism and a certain amount of strength. It's hard for 20-year-olds to play like that, right? I think you need a certain, like Aaron Gordon when he was 21 versus Aaron Gordon now. Like Aaron Gordon now could take Aaron Gordon when he was 21, fold him up and dunk him in the basket. Like it's a massive change. The thing with, because you mentioned Westbrook and some of his ferocity, I thought there were two plays recently in a game, almost back to back, that were pretty close together, that perfectly exemplified the connection and the relationship between Jokic and Westbrook and what's going on there. Because like Westbrook, when he's on the court in Denver without Jokic, looks like the sort of floundering late career journeyman that we've seen passed around the NBA for the last couple of years. Versus, not to say that his defense and some of his possessions haven't been good, but just the effectiveness of it. You look at that and it's like minus 15 per 100 or something like that. And then with Jokic, you get really good effectiveness. The numbers are very good. And I thought there were two plays almost back to back that exemplified this. The first was, we've talked about this in videos, the Nuggets love to run what is called a hawk cut, where Jokic gets a screen, usually from like a guard around the elbow, and he's coming from the top of the key down toward the sideline in a post-up position. And Westbrook is dribbling the ball as they're setting this up. He's dribbling the ball near on the near side of the court. And instead of allowing that cut to take place, Westbrook dribbles toward that cut and dribbles his defender right into the cut and creates a logjam. And I'm like, whoa, what are you doing? You're ruining the play that you're running to go nowhere. And Jokic sees this and he's like, well, I guess I'm not cutting. I'm going to turn this into a screen. And he screens for Westbrook. And then the other guy gets out of there and they kind of play this like weird two-man game where Westbrook throws him the ball after the screen, immediately cuts, and Jokic hits him for a layup because Jokic just manufactures layups out of thin air. And I was like, oh, this is a perfect example of how Jokic makes everyone look good. Like he made Westbrook look fantastic on that play. Great cut, great finish. Next time, not next time, maybe a little bit later, they come down the court, and this time Westbrook is the player dribbling up the wing. Jokic is running down the center of the floor, and there are two defenders there, and it looks like Jokic is coming over to set the screen for him. Same situation on the sideline. Get a little empty side pick and roll action. All the nerds get excited about it, right? They look at each other. Jokic looks at Westbrook. He gives him the Magic Johnson eyes. Westbrook sees it. Jokic cuts backdoor behind two players. Westbrook zips a heater behind the head of two defenders, hits Jokic in stride, and Jokic dunks it for like his 9th dunk of the year. Jokic is trying to set a Serbian record for dunks in a season. And I was just like, I don't know if two plays could capture the weird synergy and marriage that two players have better. And so to your point, Cody, yes, if you put shooters around Nikola Jokic, that's great. But shooters and cutters, shooters and athletes, shooters and ball handlers who can play out of different actions, you can unlock all of that. And I think that's some of what's happening in Denver.
And okay, let's talk a little bit more about Westbrook, Ben, because he's been kind of one of the highlights of my watching basketball lately. Like we talk about that aspect of it. You go to I think it's the Mavericks Nuggets game, and I just marked down like this. Oh, look, he's at the rim again. He's finishing it. It's like his 3rd layup this quarter. But then the force also transfers to the defense, Ben, and I think it's all connected in that way. Where let's make a connection for a second. Let's talk about one of the leaders in possibly being in the inner circle for championships. Like there's a play against the Pacers where Darius Garland is in front of Jarris Walker in transition. And Jarris Walker's dribbling, and he doesn't do a Euro. He doesn't do anything special to evade him. He just goes straight at Garland, and Garland gets out of the way. Let's go then to this Nuggets Mavericks game for just a second, where there's a play where Daniel Gafford has a nice little straight line drive to the basket. I think it's a pick and roll of some sort. He's rolling to the basket, gets it. Westbrook rotates over. He doesn't block it, but he throws himself there, not fouling him, not stripping him or anything, but the physicality completely throws off Gafford, and then it's off to the races again, right? So you see that force in a couple of different ways, and I think that covers really well for, Maxi Kleber got a couple of good three-point looks because Jokic wasn't able to be in a couple places at once, but when, again, you have these guys that can cut, those are usually guys that are also really good at running around and doing stuff defensively. So, I don't want to turn this into like a Westbrook love hour, but also I would love a Westbrook love hour because I feel like what I've seen this year has kind of made me rethink a lot of the stuff that I've thought about him throughout his career. And it's just kind of beautiful to watch, man. It's beautiful basketball.
He's a very interesting player.
Yeah.
He's a very interesting player. He is like a video game player where some of the physical attributes are tuned to 100 and they're just off the chart. And then some of the other things in terms of feel or decision making, I don't want to be pejorative, but they're not tuned to 100. And so you have this very interesting mix of like sometimes spacey basketball with like just the most elite athleticism that you could have on a basketball court for a certain play. And you see that defensively as well. And you alluded to it earlier, like he will have stretches where his defensive activity, his motor, his hustle, his hands, and his strength as a 6'3" guard really pop especially when Peyton Watson's out there flying around. I mean, there's another situation brewing, like better minutes offensively from Julian Strawther, better minutes defensively from Peyton Watson, the ability for guys like Christian Brown to knock down threes, low volume, high percentage. And it doesn't yet look like what the championship Nuggets looked like when they were just in a fever pitch, but I don't know. It's at least interesting for me, especially when you think about Jokic in a playoff series and how hard it's been for the last 4 or 5 NBA seasons when he's in a playoff series, unless you just strip their team down to Fabio Campazzos and Monte Morris's to deal with him in the playoffs.
I don't want to make a big proclamation. I don't even know if this is possible, Ben, but is it possible that being one of these like hustle, physicality, cut guys, is that a more portable skill than just like straight up shooting or really good passing? Like if you were looking at a bunch of role players and you're like, I might actually want to take the guy that's just going to go out there and go crazy, right? Especially if it's like a 6th or 7th man or something like that, or even a 5th man. Like that might be the skill if it's on the wing position. I guess also depending on the rest of the team build. From what I'm seeing across the league, Ben, like the Magic lost Franz and Paolo forever, and they're like, all right, we're just not going to shoot ever and then hope that our like football defense is going to work. And it kind of did. And it kind of did, Ben. And I feel like that would be not the outcome you'd see if it was just a team of pure shooters. So I don't know. There's something about like the rugged in your face sort of force that guys play with.
Are you suggesting that Orlando's 30.8% 3-point shooting as a team is not ideal? That's not a big deal. You don't need that.
Is it really 30.8%?
They're last in the league in 3-point shoot, unless this is incorrect. I mean, unless this is all. Is this real? Are we really streaming live on the internet right now? Is this real? I think it is.
So I think this is what's interesting. They're 4th in the East, but if you had the same statistic and they're like, actually they're bottom in playing with force, you wouldn't be 4th in the East. Like I don't think you can be a championship or like a playoff ready team in 2025 if you don't have that ability to just grind it out with force, Ben.
Yeah, they are 2.5% worse than the next worst shooting team in the league right now at 30.8%. But okay, you are asking a question that might be too big to answer here at the end of this episode, because I think it depends. I think in older generations, in older eras, the shooting is what you want because of the spacing, because of there's less read and react, because more possessions either run through the post or run through an isolation on the elbow for your star wing player of the day, your Kobe Bryant, Tracy McGrady, Paul Pierce, de Jure. I mean, we could keep going. The whole league felt like it had to have one of those. Carmelo Anthony and on and on. DeMar DeRozan. Now we're just naming the names. Sorry, I got distracted. Right. So I think what's happened now at the end of this pace and space revolution, and really like the last couple of years, is all these teams are saying, hey, we want as much skill on the floor as possible. We want as much shooting on the floor as possible. We want our offense to be as dynamic as possible. That's one thing that is a theme with some of these best offenses, the Cavs and the Grizzlies, and even Denver to some degree. Like, everyone's thinking and acting very quickly. It's very dynamic. It's not slow. It's not like it goes back to Golden State when they won the title, and that the whole lineage of that Golden State motion offense is just like constant decisions and stress on a defense for 24 seconds. So in that sense, Cody, if we take a dichotomy and say, here's a spot up 42% shooter who does nothing, we'll call him Malik Measley. Okay. He just is out there. And actually, he's actually playing a little bit more dynamically this year, but we'll call him Malik Measley, and he just spots up and he never moves. All right. But he's the best. He's an amazing shooter. He's like a legit 42% shooter. Or we have a guy who can't shoot at all, right? Cannot shoot, like just a total non-shooter, but has all the other attributes that you're talking about. Cutting. I think the ball handling is an important part of it as well, to be able to probe and get places and play off a big and a teammate and run two-man actions. Then I think in today's game, you can make an argument that the sort of quote-unquote portability of those skills is at least comparable, if not favoring the second archetype. But, and there's one more caveat, and that's why I said I don't know if we have time to do this whole thing. I have still yet to see in the playoffs what the counter is really for when teams are just like, we're ignoring you. We're totally ignoring you as a shooter. I think you can get away with one non-shooter if that non-shooter is really good at all the other things you're talking about. Playing, he's a big and he can distribute, maybe he has some ball handling, he can pass from the top, he's a rebounder, he's a role threat. I think you can be okay. But when you start saying, it's sort of the Thompson twin question, right? Right? Yeah. Like when you start saying, Asar Thompson, you're going to be the second non-shooter on the court and you're a wing. What happens in a 7-game series when a team knows all your tendencies, the players start learning all your tendencies, they take away all your first options, and you're just like 2015 Tony Allen Memphis Grizzlies. Hey, we got our center out here, but we're totally ignoring you. Your move.
It's really tough because, like you said, it's probably too big, but now we're kind of dipping our toes into it a little bit, because I think about spacing and the value of it so much when I watch the Celtics, because Peyton Pritchard is so much more than just a shooter, and we could probably talk about Peyton Pritchard for a long time because we haven't, but he spotting up like 5 feet behind the line just screws up defenses so much because they don't know how to properly like help off and recover to him. And every time I watch the Celtics, I'm like, man, being a really good shooter really helps the offense, right? But then I'm like, okay, let's say you take him out. That's tough because Peyton Pritchard's just really good. But I'm like, would I rather have somebody like one of the Thompson twins on Boston as opposed to somebody that's just like a ridiculous shooter? But then I can't do the one-to-one comparison because Pritchard's just really good at basketball, right? He's so much more than that. So, yeah, the Celtics are just weird because they're so good at spacing. Whereas like the Rockets, or like, let's say the Timberwolves, like, would you rather have that shooter next to Edwards, McDaniels, Randall, and Gobert, or would you rather have one of the Thompson twins? Because if you have one of the Thompson twins next to all that, like, poor Anthony Edwards, like, he's going to literally just have 4 defenders on him at all times, right? So I don't know, Ben.
You're getting to the dirty secret of the Celtics, which is everyone says, I hear it constantly. I heard it on a broadcast last night. The Celtics want to shoot threes. It's like, no, the Celtics want layups.
Yes.
The Celtics want layups and free throws and dunks and easy shots near the basket and mismatches near the basket. And it's only when you take that away do they have the ultimate pressure release. And that's why they take 53s a game, because every single player they put on the court is a three-point shooter. And for the most part, they've been able to build this team without those players being one-dimensional. We can nitpick Sam Hauser and Peyton Pritchard, although I would say especially Peyton Pritchard is not one-dimensional as a player. But we can nitpick what that means, right? But the core monster guys, that top 6 of, have they all made all-star teams? Have all 6 of those players made all-star teams? Jason Tatum, obviously. Jaylen Brown, obviously. Drew Holiday, obviously. Kristaps Porzingis has made an all-star team. Derek White needs to make his first all-star team this year.
Yep.
Yeah. Al Horford has made him, and Derek White, who should be an all-star. That was like a running bit last year JJ Redick had, but like, no, I actually think when we get to our sub all-star podcast selections, I don't know if there's 30 better players in the NBA than Derek White. So the dirty secret of the Celtics is that they are not picking between archetypes like you are proposing on this hypothetical. They are well-rounded players who all shoot really well. And it's like, that's how you build a dream basketball team. You build a dream basketball team with players who can defend and shoot and score and pass and are high IQ and communicate, et cetera, et cetera. And to say, if some other team tried to play the way the Celtics played, it wouldn't necessarily make them any better because they don't have that talent. I've done a good job dodging about avoiding your question about the Thompson twins because I want all the Thompson twins. I want the whole Thompson family. I sat with the Thompson family at Summer League a couple years ago. Oh. Shout out to the cousins if you're listening. I just want all of them on my team. They are an incredible breed. Before we get out of here, read the credits and do our outro, I want to take a question from the audience that plugs into this conversation we're having today. Cody, earlier in the show, you mentioned driving pressure and rim pressure when talking about TJ McConnell. Mm-hmm. What is the difference? Is there a difference between driving pressure and rim pressure since someone like TJ McConnell isn't really a great threat to finish compared to a player like Shai Gilgeous-Alexander?
So that is, I guess, interesting. You're asking about the differentiation between driving and rim pressure.
Right? Well, yes, and I think of it this way.
Yeah.
The ability to touch the paint is one skill. Mm-hmm. The ability to finish once you've touched the paint is a slightly separate skill. It's the next skill, mm-hmm. right? So I would say, and you see it with TJ McConnell, who nashes around the basket all the time and takes all. Peyton Pritchard does this. They've developed this like 2025 basketball. So I have the spacing. So I've been left in single coverage. I'm going to Wayne Gretzky around the hoop in circles. No one's come to help. I'm going to stick my leg one way, put my little chicken wing into you, get to my little fadeaway from 9 feet. TJ and Pritchard both do that. That's paint pressure. And they've tried to figure out ways to finish in that area. Whereas rim pressure, when we use that term, at least for me, is Ja Morant is coming down the lane at high speeds, and he is going to assault the basket. And Jaren Jackson Jr. touches Zion Williamson, touches from every angle, launching toward the hoop, free throws, dunks, layups. That's rim pressure.
Yeah. I like that. Because like with the McConnell, it's more like, all right, we have to make sure we defend the rim because he actually shoots pretty well here and he's quick enough that he can blow by guys and get there. So we have to send some defense.
Show some bodies. Yep.
Yeah. Whereas like Anthony Edwards, Ja Morant, they get a step. It's like a 5-alarm fire. It's like, oh my God, everyone just goes into rotation. People are freaking out. It breaks defenses. So I think it's just like TJ McConnell, what is he? Is he 6 foot? Is he a 6-footer? Like legitimately? So it's like a JJ Barea type of situation where he's not a 6-footer. He doesn't have a 50-inch vertical. He doesn't have like Donovan Mitchell arm span type of thing. So, the finishes in that way aren't going to be quite as scary. But he's quick enough that he can get to the basket. Whereas like Ja, you need to send somebody like Rudy Gobert, else he's just going to yam it on your head.
To support us, patreon.com/thinking basketball. You can get our in-season stats board over there. Of course, we've added all our extra video content over there so you can get everything in one. Or if you just want the video, you can go to YouTube and join the membership over there. Patreon.com/thinking basketball. Cody. Mm-hmm. We're after the credits. Is there anything that you want to get to today? How did you feel? This conversation went off the rails. It was amazing.
We're at 1 hour and 8. Listen, I want to talk about, but it's going to be 20 minutes. So we got to do it really truncated. Have you played around at all with the NBA site's dunk score?
I don't care about the dunk score. I like the other stats.
Yes.
Yes. So where do you get this? You sent this to me. This is on NBA.com. Is it stats.nba.com or is it somewhere else?
It's stats.nba.com. I think it's whatever that website is. That's what I always Googled, end up getting there.
Yeah. It's fun to look at confirmation that Shaedon Sharpe and Ja Morant and players like that have ridiculous bounce. Stephon Castle, I think, has a 40-inch vertical dunk. So playing with some of the stats like that were fun for me because, of course, you can bring up the footage. But I don't understand the score, Cody. I don't understand who is giving out the dunk score or who invented this algorithm. Because if Zion Williamson doing a 360 windmill in the middle of the game, you're a dunk contest aficionado, and we should probably save this for February, but I have to do it right now while we're on it. Can you name a better dunk contest dunk in the last few years than Zion Williamson's in-game 360 windmill dunk?
Well, Mac McClung put on a show. I don't know how long ago that was. But
when Mac McClung was pushing off the ball and using it to jump over everyone he done. Yes, continue.
Oh my goodness, I thought there were a couple really nice dunks recently, but I get your point. I gotta ask like a dunk person that loves dunks, right? Like if you're into the sport of basketball, I doubt there's ever a time where you're like, no, sir, the dunks aren't for me. Like, just give me some other stuff.
Give me free throws, please.
Like you're 12 years old and you're like, I hate it when players hit their head on the rim. Like, do you think that there's a cap on the fast break dunk in terms of the dunk score? Like, if you were handing it out, can a transition dunk beat out some of the best poster dunks?
Well, that's a good philosophical question, because part of the in-game dunk is the sort of almost emasculation of the opponent, the defeating, the physical conquering of the opponent. I think of Kobe Bryant crossing over an Orlando Magic player and then just spiking it in Dwight Howard's face. And it's like, when you talk to a lot of people of that era, they would say, of course, rightfully so, they would say, have you seen this Vince Carter where he's on the baseline and he's in transition and he does the three? I mean, Vince Carter has an inside out 360 in a game, and those dunks are nuts. But I think for some people, to your point, there is a philosophical divide where the in-game dunk, the essence and the excitement of the in-game dunk, is the mano-a-mano in-air contest, the Dwayne Wade coming down on Anderson Varejao for the Kodak moment, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Somebody brought up a great question here in the chat where it says, does Cody look at pro dunkers? And, I see these. Like, you see like the Jordan Kilganon type of guys where they do like the reverse, like you see some 50-inch vertical type stuff that do the reverse types of dunks. I actually don't like that content as much, right? It's like if you go to YouTube and you watch somebody, it's like, I want to watch a drummer hit like 7,000 beats per second. Like, that's all really impressive, but I want to see these sorts of skills like dunking, like playing the drum set really well. I want to see it in the context of like the song. I want to see the music, the majesty of it all. Like, sure, can somebody like that probably dunk better than Michael Jordan? Yeah, but like Michael Jordan giving the Smitty on the baseline and going over and just climbing the rafters to yam it on Patrick Ewing, like you can't script that, and the unscripted nature of it just makes it so much more beautiful, Ben.
Yeah, I just think I'm with you here. I just think the pro dunkers, the specialty dunkers, they're their own thing and they go on tour, right? So they have some following, but they're not competing with the Saturday night all-star ratings or whatever it is, or a viral dunk clip in an NBA game because it's played at the highest level. So, all right, Cody, we have given you the platform for the dunk score. We'll have to pause it there. Thanks as always for listening. Thanks for bearing with us with our technical issues. I can't get stuff on the screen. Cody's muting himself on his mic and he doesn't know it, but hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for listening and that you are having a great day.